All right, welcome back to Business Today. Now, let's get to the issue of State of the Nation. Now, President William Ruto says that his government is on top of things and the rising cost of living is being addressed accordingly. Speaking during the State of the Nation address at the bicameral parliament, the president said his administration has put in place measures to curb the rising cost. At the same time, the president has announced early debt repayment of the accumulated loans. KTN's political affairs and parliamentary reporter Daniel Karuki gives us the details.
President William Ruto arrived at the precincts of Parliament Thursday afternoon, ready to deliver the State of the Nation. The president inspecting guard of honor mounted by Kenya Army, later escorted by the two speakers of the houses, Moses Wetangula for the National Assembly and Amason Kingi for the Senate, into the chambers for the presidential address. With Kenyans eager to hear his plan for lowering cost of living, President Ruto assured that the government was aware of the high cost of living and that it was on top of things, adding that several interventions have been put in place leading to a drop in prices of commodities.
Cost of living is not an abstract phenomenon. It is a reality experienced by households, which can be addressed through practical action and effective measures. As a result of these interventions, today, a 2-kilogram packet of maize flour is selling at a low of 145 and a high of 175, depending on the brand you buy, down from 250 shillings a few months ago. The famous Gorogoro of maize is selling at between 60 and 75. Honorable members, you know how much it costed a few months ago.
The president also took time to address the increased appetite for loans. The president has announced the government will repay the loans earlier than intended, especially the Eurobond.
Our efforts to stabilize the situation have yielded such progress that next month, in December, we will be able to settle the first Kenya shillings $300 million or 500 billion Kenya shillings installment of the US dollars 2 billion Eurobond debt that falls due next year. The time has come, therefore, to retire the false comforts and illusionary benefits of wasteful expenditure and counterproductive subsidies on consumption, by which we dug ourselves deeper into the hole of avoidable debt.
President William Ruto has directed that National Youth Service NYS trainees be given priority during the countrywide police and military recruitments. The president said from next year, recruitment to the NYS will be doubled to 40,000 in a move aimed at expanding job opportunities. The president said from next year, recruitment to the NYS will be doubled to 40,000 in a move aimed at expanding job opportunities for the youth. This as the president also recognized efforts by National Dialogue Committee, NADOC, over the ongoing talks that he says will help in stabilizing and working on the economy.
Specifically, I thank the two co-chairs, my good brother, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, our former president, and the leader of majority in the House, Kimani Ichung'wah, for doing a wonderful job. Congratulations, gentlemen. I salute the courage and patriotism of my fellow leaders who have embraced national dialogue and engage and encourage all of us to keep up the noble work of bringing Kenyans together. There is so much to report about the progress we have made in serving the people of Kenya.
Daniel Kariuki, KTN News, Parliament Buildings, Nairobi.
All right. So there you have the State of the Nation in a glimpse, of course, by the president. Dr. Lunyi, I mean, looking at that, first of all, the issue of the cost of living, cost of food to be specific, because we know the two major drivers of inflation is the issue of fuel and food, and it touched on food heavily. Talk to me about that. Have the interventions by the government worked to bring down the cost of food?
Noah, the fertilizer was brought at a lower price, even as the president has said, it was reduced to 2,500. However, the rains, we have seen some rains coming back, but not those days. Probably we expect that if there is something that this range would bring to food, they will lower the food prices. But then not so much, especially when you talk to the ordinary person. I think there are some people who have been making fun of the gorogoro, that it is not that amount 60 in reality. So we expect to see that this one will take effect. We hope that the food production will increase, but not so much. If you ask the people on the ground, you may hear they are not speaking the same language in terms of reduction in food. It's just a hope that we have.
And that's kind of interesting, because on the flip side of that, on the issue of cost of living, comes in the issue of fuel prices. And just a few days ago, we saw the cabinet secretary for actually energy talk about what is happening between Israel and Hamas. The trickle-down effect that we might see on fuel prices. I mean, should we brace for tougher times? It feels like Kenyans are sort of bipolar. You're being told, yeah, food is affordable, but at the same time, yeah, on the other side, you're having, your fuel might reach 300 shillings a litre. How do you process this?
Unfortunately, unlike food, where when it rains, we expect that food will be better, for fuel, it depends on external factors that are not actually controllable, neither can we be able to see. However, there is still the effect of, there is still the issue of what is it that we factor into the pricing of that fuel. This is an issue that we have discussed over and over, and probably the direction is to really think in terms of how to lower it, because when fuel is high, and then everything else will be up. I think when you listen to the State of Nation address, it must have been acknowledged as a challenge, one of the challenges that we are facing. So we need to take some steps in terms of how to reduce that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at the same time, even just to bring in the current issue that we've seen, recently, in regards to government services charges, that's another aspect that we've seen the government come in strongly and say that this is a revenue stream that we need to relook at and see how it can perform better. We've seen this with the issues to do with customs at our airports. Also, them being very proactive and asking people, you better pay customs for goods over, 75, that is $500 and more. Looking at that, first of all, how do you process this whole thing? I know a lot of people are focused on the ID thing, that to replace your ID, you'll have to part with 2,000 shillings, and this is something that we understand as it stands, it's been put on hold by the courts. So how do you process government's approach towards raising more revenue?
Noah, every time a government spends, it must be supported by some revenue that is collected. Appropriation in aid is this, that the ministries bring so that they can support the expenditure of the government. So when we have less in the economy money, then we have to think in terms of how can we be able to increase the appropriations in aid so that we collect more to support the expenditure. However, some of them, as you have heard, people, and I think citizens are concerned about ID. Not even ID, Noah. I don't know whether you are married. You see, they are saying that that is going to be, it's going to be how much? 50,000. So I don't know. Now for an ordinary person, do you raise the money for marriage or you look for food? Because food is,
I'll be married soon. Should those of us who are going to be married soon be really concerned about this?
Serious, Noah, because you see 50,000 now you have to part with. But thanks, because the High Court has stopped it. We hope that, and I think many voices have spoken to this, including the AG, that this needs to be reviewed. There are many things there that need to be reviewed, because getting money for an ordinary Kenyan is not easy. And some of this, even if we are raising money, we need to consider the low cadre person. What is it in terms of, are they able to afford the services? Because that will mean that affordability of the service becomes difficult for the ordinary person.
Exactly. You know, Dr. a lot of single people have panicked. Oh, what is happening with the marriage certificate? We understand that marriage certificate doesn't hold marriages together, but this is the thing, actually, I was looking at that particular Gazette notice that has been suspended. And I tried looking what exactly is going with marriage charges, which I did see, because it was under getting citizenship that marriage was impacted. If you want to acquire citizenship by marriage, initially you used to pay 30,000, all right? And now that has been raised to 100,000. I really look for that figure about marriage certificate being added. I haven't seen it yet, but I'll try find it. But Dr. apart from that also, we've seen our president being very passionate. We want visa-free Africa, and we've been giving all this, you guys can come into the country, in different countries, visa-free. And it's a good thing for intra-Africa movement and making it easier for us to visit our African brothers and sisters. But at the same time, now to get a passport, you have to pay a little bit extra, especially which majority of Kenyans go for. 34 page has been raised to 7,500 shillings. What does this mean?
Of course, it has implication, but of course, let me say something about the African. You know, our president is Pan-Africanist. He like Africa and like things for Africa. Even as you could read, we have we want to promote African currencies to sort out our issues. That is for another day, now you know. But then. Free movement in Africa will enhance trade, which is very critical. However, the passport rising, that might also speak volumes, especially to the young people who may want to look for jobs abroad, because we have a challenge of employment. So there is a need to really consider our youth population, put the passport figure manageable before when they want to look for jobs abroad and things like that.
Definitely. Dr. time is up, but I want to ask you this. By the time we were getting married, how much was the marriage certificate, man?
No, I don't think I paid more than 1,000 shillings. I've not really checked, but probably it was 500 shillings or something like that. That's what I might have parted with for marriage.
Hey, should have gotten married earlier, man. But thank you very much, Dr. Leji. Briefly, moving into the future, moving into a new week that is coming up, what are you keen on, especially from the business front, before we leave?
We are keen on the market performance. That is critical. There need to be something done urgently, because, you know, as I told you earlier, Noah, stock market speaks to the economy as a whole. So when we're doing badly in the market, that is critical. Again, also, all efforts towards looking at our dollar situation, because that's also critical for trade, as we have also said. So we need to think in those directions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tobias, but he wants to be called Tobias Oluenyi, and he's an economics professor at JCOT and a finance, specializing in finance. Thank you very much for giving us your time and for engaging. We do appreciate you. Well, that's where we put a full stop this week on Business Today. Thank you very much for joining with us. You guys are really amazing people, making time every time between 3 and 4 to watch business content right here on KTN News. It's been a beautiful week. I wish you a blessed weekend. Ken was not able to be with us today, but since he's here in spirit, I've had some spiritual term that he likes using. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, but have yourself a blessed weekend. I'm out. Noah Kipkemboy. Up next, we have Bio KTN. Stay tuned.
The rapid climate change we are now seeing is caused by humans using oil, gas and coal in their homes, factories and transport. When these fossil fuels burn, they release greenhouse gases, mostly carbon dioxide. These gases trap the sun's heat and cause the planet's temperature to rise. The world is now about 1.1 degrees Celsius warmer than it was in the 19th century, and the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has risen by 50%.
When you hear climate change, it's very much about how climate now is basically posing an existential threat to human beings. We know now that human activities very much contribute to climate change.
In addition to drought, African populations are experiencing floods, heat waves, and outbreak of climate change-related diseases.
According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change IPCC report released in late March, it says the world temperatures need to come down as greenhouse gas emissions are projected to go above 1.5 degrees Celsius between the years 2030 and 2035, or even beyond, hence increasing global warming.
You hear mostly that we need to ensure that the temperatures remain at 1.5 C before our pre-industrial age. And so that means everything we do must be very much mitigated. That's why you hear mitigation. We have to adapt where we can. But because now we know that the planet is warming anyway, so there's something in the atmosphere, which is CO2. And so as much as we want to limit the emissions, we now must think of removing some of these emissions that we put in. So think about it as planetary waste removal.
To keep temperatures within 1.5 degrees Celsius limit, carbon emissions need to be reduced by at least 43% by 2030 and at least 60% by 2035. And this is the time to start making the changes. While speaking at the 3rd Regional Symposium on Greening Judiciaries in Africa, President William Ruto said countries have no option but to go green.
Do we continue the fossil fuel powered industrialization, which is destroying our globe with disastrous effects, or do we go green?
Governments agreed at last year's COP27 climate summit in Egypt to create a fund to help pay for the damage that a warming planet is inflicting on vulnerable countries, but failed to commit to new measures for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Africa is the least emitting continent, but bears the most burden of climate change.
We need to continuously have a political conversation that then ensures countries put laws and limits to how much we emit, and countries that emit more need to compensate or work with countries that emit less.
Among other measures to ensure energy systems are net zero carbon emitters, a substantial reduction in overall fossil fuel use, minimal use of unabated fossil fuels, and use of carbon capture and storage in the remaining fossil fuel systems, and energy conservation are part of the solutions fronted to reduce global warming.
You hear,